16 cardinals received the same envelope on the same morning. Inside, a single sheet of Vatican letterhead. No greeting, no pleasantries, just one line. Comply by July 1st, or you are no longer part of this church. The signature at the bottom belonged to Pope Leo XIV. And when those cardinals opened that letter, 3 of them reportedly collapsed into their chairs. One called it the most terrifying document he had ever read, because this was not a bluff. This was not a negotiation. This was the Vatican's final warning, and what these men had done to deserve it is something the Church never wanted you to know. Before we go any further, if stories like this keep you coming back, take 1 second and subscribe. That's all it takes. Now, let me show you how we got here. The letter was dated May 13th, 2026, 5 days ago. It arrived by special Vatican courier, hand-delivered to 16 different residencies across 4 continents: Rome, Manila, Chicago, Sao Paulo, Kinshasa. Each cardinal received an identical copy. Each copy bore the papal seal in crimson wax, something the Vatican hadn't used for official correspondence in over 40 years. That detail alone sent shockwaves through church circles. The wax seal meant this wasn't administrative. It was ceremonial. It was final. It carried the weight of centuries. But the real shock was in the content. The letter outlined in precise canonical language a list of violations: financial misconduct, obstruction of internal investigations, willful defiance of direct papal orders, and at the bottom, a deadline: July 1st, 2026. Either these 16 cardinals would comply with a set of specific demands, or Pope Leo XIV would initiate formal excommunication proceedings against all of them simultaneously. In one stroke, mass excommunication. 16 princes of the Church cast out at once. Nothing like this has happened in modern history. The last time the Vatican excommunicated a cardinal was in 1927, and that was a single individual over a doctrinal dispute. What Pope Leo XIV was threatening was something entirely different. This was a purge. Now, to understand why, we need to go back exactly 11 months. When Robert Francis Prevost became Pope Leo XIV on May 8, 2025, the world saw a quiet, measured man, an American pope, a former missionary, a theologian who spoke softly and smiled easily. What most people didn't see was the steel underneath. Within his first week in office, Leo XIV requested a full audit of the Vatican Bank. Not a partial review, not a summary report. A full forensic, line-by-line audit, going back 15 years. The people inside the Curia who heard this request went pale, because they knew what those books contained, and they did everything they could to stop him from seeing them. The first sign of resistance came in June 2025. Leo XIV appointed an external auditing team from Switzerland, 3 forensic accountants with no ties to the Church. Within 2 weeks, their access was revoked, not by the Pope, by someone inside the Secretariat of State who claimed the accountants lacked proper ecclesiastical clearance. Leo XIV reinstated them the next day. 3 days later, the lead accountant's Vatican credentials were deactivated again. This time, his hotel room in Rome was also broken into. His laptop was taken. Nothing else. That was when Pope Leo XIV understood something critical. The resistance wasn't just bureaucratic. It was organized. He summoned the Secretariat of State, Cardinal Vittorio Manzini, to a private meeting. What happened inside that room was never officially disclosed. But according to 2 sources who spoke to Italian journalist Franca Giordano, Leo III placed a folder on the table and said 6 words. "I know what you have done." Manzini reportedly said nothing. He left the meeting 15 minutes later. That evening, he made 11 phone calls to cardinals around the world. Those 11 calls would eventually lead to the coalition that Leo XIII is now threatening to dismantle. Let me explain the coalition. In the years following Pope Francis's death, a group of senior cardinals had quietly consolidated control over three key Vatican financial instruments. The first was the Peter's Pence Fund, the collection taken annually from Catholics worldwide meant for charitable works. The second was a network of Vatican-linked real estate holdings in London, Geneva, and Hong Kong. The third was a shadow endowment buried inside the administration of the patrimony of the Apostolic See, known as APSA. Together, these three instruments controlled an estimated €4.1 billion, and the coalition had been siphoning from all three, not in obvious ways, not in ways that would trigger external alarms. They used a method that forensic investigators would later call canonical laundering. Funds were moved between Vatican accounts under the guise of charitable distributions, then redirected to private investment vehicles, controlled by intermediaries. Those intermediaries were lay, people with deep connections to the cardinals. Some were family members. Some were business associates from before these men ever entered the priesthood. The amounts were staggering. Over a 5-year period, an estimated €340 million had been redirected. That's money donated by ordinary Catholics around the world. Money meant for the poor. Money meant for disaster relief. Money meant for missions in some of the most desperate places on earth. And it had been funneled into luxury real estate, private equity funds, and in at least 2 cases, personal accounts in the Cayman Islands. Pope Leo XIV discovered all of this. Not all at once, not in a single dramatic moment, but piece by piece over months, through the work of a small, trusted team he assembled in secret. He called them the Fishermen, 3 canon lawyers, 2 forensic accountants, and a former Interpol investigator who had converted to Catholicism late in life. This team operated out of a small office in the Apostolic Palace that had previously been used as a storage room. Their work was classified at the highest level. Even most of Leo XIII's own advisors didn't know they existed. By December 2025, the Fishermen had compiled a 900-page dossier. It named names. It traced transactions. It included screenshots of encrypted messages between cardinals discussing how to block the Pope's reforms. One message, sent by Cardinal Augusto Ferreira of Sao Paulo, read, "The American does not understand how Rome works. He will learn, or he will be made irrelevant." When Leo XIV read that message, he reportedly closed the file, sat in silence for several minutes, and then said to his secretary, "They think this is politics. It's not. This is the soul of the Church." But he didn't act immediately. That's what made Leo XIV dangerous to them. He waited. January 2020. 6 passed. February, March. The coalition grew more confident. They interpreted his silence as weakness. Manzini reportedly told an ally in March, "He has no appetite for confrontation. He's a monk, not a general." That assessment would prove catastrophically wrong, because while the coalition relaxed, Leo XIV was doing something they never anticipated. He was building an alliance of his own. Quietly, methodically, he reached out to cardinals who had been marginalized by the coalition, men who had been passed over for promotions, men who had reported financial irregularities only to be silenced, men who had privately expressed disgust at what was happening inside the Vatican's walls, but lacked the power to do anything about it. Leo XIV gave them a choice: stand with him or watch the Church continue to rot from the inside. 31 cardinals said yes. That number is significant. In a college of cardinals with roughly 230 members, 31 might not sound like much, but these weren't random names. These were cardinals who controlled key dioceses, who had deep influence in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, who commanded the loyalty of millions of Catholics in regions where the Church was actually growing. Leo XIV wasn't just building a voting bloc, he was building a movement. And then came April 2026. On April 3rd, the Vatican announced a new apostolic constitution called Lux Veritatis, Latin for light of truth. It was presented as a routine administrative reform. The press barely covered it, but inside the Vatican, it landed like a bomb, because buried in the document's 112 articles were 3 provisions that fundamentally changed the power structure of the Church. First, all Vatican financial entities would now report directly to an independent oversight commission appointed by the Pope, not by the Curia. Second, any cardinal found to have obstructed a papal investigation would be automatically suspended from all duties pending review. And third, the Pope reserved the right to initiate excommunication proceedings against any member of the clergy, including cardinals, without the traditional requirement of a canonical trial. If the evidence of financial malfeasance was overwhelming and uncontested, that third provision was the nuclear option, and everyone knew who it was aimed at. The coalition panicked. For the first time in months, Mazzini reached out to Leo XIII directly, requesting an audience. The Pope agreed. The meeting took place on April 9th in the Papal Library. No staff, no secretaries, just the 2 of them. What happened in that meeting has become the most talked about moment inside Vatican walls. According to a source who spoke to the Pope's personal secretary afterward, Mazzini came in aggressive. He told Leo XIII that Lux Veritatis was an overreach, that it violated canonical tradition, that it would split the Church. He reportedly said, "You are not a king. You cannot rule by decree." Leo XIII listened, and when Mazzini finished, the Pope leaned forward and replied, "I am not a king. I am a shepherd, and shepherds protect their flock, even from wolves who wear the collar." Mazzini left the meeting white-faced. In the days that followed, the coalition attempted something extraordinary. They tried to convene an emergency session of the College of Cardinals to challenge the legitimacy of Lux Veritatis. Under church law, this would require the signatures of at least 50 cardinals. Mazzini needed 50 names on a petition. He got 42, 8 short. And the reason he fell short was because Leo XIII's quiet alliance held firm. The 31 cardinals who had pledged their support. The Pope actively lobbied their colleagues to refuse Mazzini's petition. In Africa, Cardinal Thomas Okafor of Lagos personally flew to 3 countries in a single week to convince wavering cardinals to stay out of it. In the Philippines, Cardinal Reyes made a public statement supporting Lux Veritatis, calling it the most important reform document since Vatican II. The petition failed, and with it, the coalition's last legal avenue of resistance. That's when things turned ugly. On April 22nd, an A2 anonymous dossier was leaked to 3 major Italian newspapers. It contained personal information about Pope Leo XIV, fabricated allegations about his time as a missionary in Peru, and doctored photographs designed to discredit him. The Italian press, to its credit, largely refused to publish the material after forensic analysis revealed the manipulations. But the leak itself revealed something important. The coalition was willing to go outside the Church to destroy the Pope. Leo XIV's response was swift and chilling. On April 25th, he addressed a private assembly of senior Vatican officials. He did not raise his voice. He did not pound the table. He spoke for exactly 7 minutes, and in those 7 minutes he laid out, without naming names, every major financial crime the coalition had committed. Every transaction, every shell company, every diverted euro. He recited numbers from memory, dates, account numbers. The room was so silent, you could hear the fountain in the courtyard outside. Then he said, "I will give them one final chance, because mercy is not weakness, but I will not give them 2. That was the genesis of the letter. It took the Vatican's legal team 3 weeks to draft it. Every word was reviewed by canon lawyers. Every demand was tied to specific provisions of Lux Veritatis and existing church law. The letter was ironclad, and on May 13th it was sent. The 16 cardinals who received it were the core of the coalition. Not all of them were equally guilty. Some had played minor roles. Some had simply looked the other way while the money disappeared. But all of them had been given previous opportunities to cooperate with the Pope's investigation, and all of them had refused or obstructed. The demands in the letter were specific. Each cardinal was required to submit a full financial disclosure covering the past 10 years. Each was required to resign from any financial oversight position within the Vatican. Each was required to make a formal written statement acknowledging the authority of Lux Veritatis, and each was required to cooperate fully with the fisherman's ongoing investigation. The deadline, July 1st, 2026, 43 days from today. If any of the 16 refused, the Pope would invoke Article 97 of Lux Veritatis and begin excommunication proceedings. Not one at a time, all at once. Mass excommunication. Now, what makes this so explosive is not just the scale, it's the implications. Excommunication is the most severe penalty the Catholic Church can impose. It means complete separation from the body of the faithful. An excommunicated person cannot receive sacraments, cannot participate in the liturgy, cannot hold any office in the Church. For a cardinal, it means losing everything: their title, their authority, their place in the hierarchy, their right to vote in a future conclave, their legacy, everything. And Pope Leo XIV is prepared to impose this on 16 men simultaneously. The reaction has been seismic. Within 48 hours of the Papal letters being delivered, 3 cardinals reportedly reached out to the Vatican seeking to negotiate. They were told the terms were non-negotiable. Comply fully or face the consequences. No modifications, no extensions, no middle ground. Cardinal Manzini has not responded publicly, but sources say he has been in constant communication with the remaining holdouts trying to maintain unity. His argument, reportedly, is that if they all refuse together, the Pope won't follow through. That excommunicating 16 cardinals at once would be too damaging to the Church's image. That Leo XIV is bluffing, but those who know Leo XIV say he has never bluffed in his life. And there is another dimension to this that most people are missing. This isn't just about money. This is about the future of the Catholic Church. Pope Leo XIV came into office with a vision. A church that is transparent. A church that is accountable. A church that confronts its own failures rather than hiding behind tradition and silence. Every reform he has attempted in the past year has been met with resistance from this coalition. The financial audit was just the beginning. He also proposed reforms to the handling of abuse cases, changes to the process of appointing bishops, and new rules requiring financial transparency at every level of the Church, from the Vatican down to individual parishes. The coalition blocked or undermined nearly all of it, not because they opposed reform in principle, though some did, but because every reform Leo XIV proposed threatened to expose the systems they had built. Systems of patronage, systems of control, systems that kept money flowing to the right people and kept inconvenient truths buried. For Leo XIV, the excommunication threat is not revenge. It's surgery. He is trying to cut out the cancer so the body can heal. But the surgery carries enormous risks. If the 16 cardinals refuse to comply and Leo XIII follows through, the Church will face its most dramatic internal crisis since the Reformation. Commentators are already drawing comparisons. Some are calling it a potential schism. Others say it's the opposite of a schism, that it's the Pope reasserting control to prevent one. The geopolitical implications are also significant. Several of the targeted cardinals have deep political connections. Cardinal Ferreira in Brazil has close ties to multiple senators. Cardinal O'Malley in Chicago has been a significant figure in American Catholic political circles. Cardinal Liu in Hong Kong has navigated the delicate relationship between the Church and the Chinese government. If these men are excommunicated, the diplomatic fallout could be substantial. And then there is the question of the faithful. What will ordinary Catholics think? Will they see this as a Pope cleaning house, or will they see it as a Pope tearing the house apart? Initial polling data collected by the Catholic Media Institute just 2 days ago suggests something remarkable. 68% of practicing Catholics surveyed across 12 countries said they supported the Pope's right to excommunicate cardinals who committed financial crimes. In Latin America, that number was 74%. In Africa, 79%. The regions where the Church is youngest and most vibrant are overwhelmingly behind Leo XIV. In Europe and North America, the numbers were more divided. But even there, a slim majority supported the Pope's position. This matters because it reveals something the coalition fatally miscalculated. They assumed that tradition and institutional loyalty would protect them. They assumed that ordinary Catholics would be too uncomfortable with confrontation to support such drastic action. They were wrong. What they fail to understand is that the faithful are tired of scandals, tired of cover-ups, tired of feeling like the institution they love is being run by men who don't deserve to lead it. Pope Leo XIV understood this. He understood it from day one. There is a moment from his early papacy that keeps getting cited in Vatican circles. It happened during his first general audience in May 2025. A young woman from Nigeria approached him during the meet and greet. She was crying. She told him that her parish in Lagos had been without a functioning school for 3 years because funds that were supposed to arrive from Rome never came. She asked him directly where the money went. Leo XIV held her hands. He looked at her and he said, "I don't know yet, but I will find out, and when I do, those responsible will answer for it." He found out, and now they will answer. But the question remains, will they comply? As of today, May 18th, 5 days after the letters were sent, 3 of the 16 cardinals have reportedly begun the process of submitting their financial disclosures. Their names have not been officially released, but sources indicate they are among the less senior members of the coalition, men who were drawn in through loyalty to Manzini rather than personal greed. Their cooperation is significant, but it's not enough. Leo XIV's demand is total compliance. All 16, no exceptions. The remaining 13 are holding the line. For now, inside the Vatican, the atmosphere has been described as electric. Staff members who have worked in the Curia for decades say they have never experienced anything like it. There is fear, there is excitement, there is a sense that something fundamental is changing. One senior Monsignor told a journalist off the record, "It feels like we're living through a turning point. Either the Church becomes what it should be, or it tears itself apart." Trying. Leo XIV himself has been remarkably composed through all of it. Those who see him daily say he continues his normal routine. Morning prayer at 5:30, Mass at 7 o'clock, meetings through the day, simple meals. Evening, walks in the Vatican gardens. He has not given any public statements about the letters. He has not appeared anxious. He has not sought reassurance from his allies. When Cardinal Okafor visited him last week and asked how he was holding up, Leo XIV reportedly smiled and said, "The truth holds itself up. I just carry it." There is something else happening behind the scenes that deserves attention. In the days since the letter was sent, Leo XIV has also quietly reached out to the families of the targeted cardinals, not to threaten, not to pressure, but to pastoral support. He sent personal notes to the sisters, brothers, and elderly parents of several of the 16, assuring them that his actions were not personal, that he prayed for their family members, that he hoped for reconciliation. This detail is extraordinary. In the middle of the most aggressive disciplinary action a pope has taken in centuries, Leo XIV is simultaneously acting as a pastor. It speaks to something that even his critics acknowledge. This is not a man acting out of anger. This is a man acting out of conviction. But conviction alone won't determine the outcome. The next 43 days will be defined by power, pressure, and the willingness of powerful men to submit to authority they have spent years undermining. There are 3 scenarios being discussed in Vatican circles right now. The first, full compliance. All 16 cardinals submit their disclosures, resign their financial positions, and cooperate with the investigation. The crisis is resolved internally. The Church moves forward. This is the best-case scenario, and most analysts consider it the least likely. The second, partial compliance. Some cardinals comply, others refuse. Leo XIV excommunicates the holdouts. The Church is shaken, but survives. The excommunicated cardinals either accept their fate or attempt to challenge it publicly, potentially attracting media attention and political support. This is considered the most likely scenario. The third, mass refusal. All 16 cardinals hold together and refuse to comply. Leo XIV proceeds with mass excommunication. The action triggers a full-blown crisis. Media, frenzy, political intervention, possible legal challenges in secular courts regarding Vatican property and finances. Some commentators warn this could lead to a formal split, with the excommunicated cardinals attempting to establish a rival authority. This is the nightmare scenario, and it's not impossible. What makes the third scenario so dangerous is not the excommunication itself. It's what comes after. 16 excommunicated cardinals would become 16 free agents, unbound by church discipline, each with their own network of loyalists, their own media contacts, their own political allies. They could speak publicly, they could write books, they could give interviews, they could claim victimhood, and in the current media environment, where narratives travel faster than truth, the damage they could inflict on the Church's reputation would be incalculable. Leo X knows this. He has weighed the risk, and he has decided that the risk of inaction is greater. Because, here's what most people don't understand. The €340 million is just what the fishermen have confirmed so far. The investigation is ongoing. There are indications that the total amount of misappropriated funds could be significantly higher. Some estimates within the Vatican place the real number closer to €600 million, and the financial crimes may be connected to other forms of corruption that are even harder to confront. The Pope is not just fighting a financial battle. He's fighting for the moral credibility of the institution he leads, and he knows that if he backs down now, if he lets this deadline pass without consequences, then every reform he has attempted will collapse. Every promise he has made will ring hollow. Every Catholic who placed their hope in him will feel betrayed. That's why July 1st is not just a deadline. It's a line in the sand. It's the moment where the Catholic Church decides what it is, and the world is watching. In the meantime, something remarkable has been happening at the grassroots level. Catholic parishes around the world have begun organizing prayer vigils in support of the Pope's reform efforts. In Manila, over 40,000 people gathered for a candlelight vigil last weekend. In Nairobi, Catholic youth groups have been staging daily rosary marathons. In small towns across Latin America, priests have been incorporating prayers for church transparency into their daily masses. This groundswell of support is unprecedented, and it's putting enormous pressure on the holdout cardinals, because the longer they resist, the more they look like exactly what the Pope says they are. Men who have placed their own interests above the mission of the Church. Cardinal Manzini reportedly told an ally just 2 days ago, "He has turned the people against us." But the truth is simpler than that. The people were never with them. The people gave their money in good faith. They donated to Peter's pence, believing it would feed the hungry and shelter the homeless. They trusted their leaders, and that trust was violated. Pope Leo XIV didn't turn the people against the coalition. The coalition turned itself against the people. Leo XIV simply made it visible. And now, with 43 days remaining, the question is not whether the Pope is serious. Everyone knows he is. The question is whether 16 men will swallow their pride, face their crimes, and submit to the authority of the Church they swore to serve. Or whether July 1st, 2026 will become the most dramatic day in Vatican history since Martin Luther nailed his theses to the door. The clock is ticking. The letters have been sent. The terms are clear, and Pope Leo XIV is waiting. He is not angry. He is not anxious. He is patient. The way a man is patient when he knows the truth is on his side. He said it himself in a quiet moment to the small team that has stood by him through all of this. This Church will not hide anymore. Not from the world. Not from itself. July 1st is coming, and when it arrives, nothing will be the same. If this story moved you, share it. The world needs to know what's happening inside those Vatican walls. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time, because what happens next in this story could reshape the Catholic Church for generations, and you don't want to miss it.